attack tool and one defense tool, also within the domain of DOS, or denial of service attacks. Then for group 8, and group, you'll be covering IDSs, which is HIDSs and NIDSs, which are host-based and network-based. And for the practical, you'll be demonstrating how you can hack into Android devices or into Android apps. Then for group 9, Seredzai, Daniel, and Ganji, you'll be covering penetration testing methodologies, then a comparison of the different methodologies and the appropriate form to use, and then the general process of pen testing. So in terms of methodologies, there are different methodologies that exist. I think I just mentioned them in passing yesterday. Like there is the one by NIST, there is OWASP, there is what else? There's OSSTMM, there's ISAF. There's like different methodologies that exist when it comes to pen testing that people have to know. But then after you know that they exist, you have to know which one to apply for the different contexts you'll be performing investigations on. So it could be for a web application, there's one specific methodology you have to use in that case. If it's for networks, there's another methodology you have to use for that. So they tend to differ. So each methodology applies or works best for a different environment or for a different scenario, which is where this aspect of comparison comes in. Then for the practical parts, you'll give an overview of how you can use the Metasploit framework. This may seem like a bit theoretical, so what you can do is you just pick one attack you can perform using the Metasploit framework. Okay, so just one attack using Metasploit framework. Then for group 10, that's Angelo Nepera, you'll be covering web services and web application operation, and also how you can protect web applications. And the practical parts is you'll be demonstrating 2 vulnerability scanning tools. Then for group 11, which is Meshek Makwaza and group, you'll be covering cyber threat intelligence and basically highlighting or demonstrating one incident being managed through a CTI on one platform. So you first understand what a CTI is, the different types that exist and the different ones that do exist. And then you'll understand that there are different platforms that you can use. So you just have to demonstrate one type of incident, which sort of like brings to the fore, could see how do CTIs work. So I think in the simplest way, what this can be explained as is how you can use a cyber threat intelligence platform in the event that you have experienced an incident. So incidents, it's a phishing attack of some kind, or somebody has sent some spam to your emails and so forth. You just pick one incident and then you demonstrate how do you manage or how do you handle that incident using cyber threat intelligence platforms. Then for group 12, that's Samuel Beta and group, you'll be covering threat modeling. You'll be covering threat modeling. So you'd have to do like an in-depth research on what threat modeling is. I think at some point we'll just basically go through it in brief, but the meat of the whole presentation is on your side. So in terms of the demonstration you'll be doing, you pick one tool that you can use to demonstrate threat modeling, which can be either Threat Modeler or it can be the tool at Microsoft, MTM, or you can use Threat Dragon by OWASP. You pick any tool that can be used for threat modeling and you threat model one application. So you're just basically using one tool to threat model one application. I know at this point, many of these things may seem like Greek to some and stuff, but like after you do a bit more research and you understand the concepts behind each topic. And the beauty of it is you'll be working as a group. So at some point you have to, I don't know, not necessarily meet physically, but as a sort of somehow make your minds meet together and get a better understanding of what topic you're supposed to be working on. So much that by the time Pamuno Pizza, this particular course, you'd find your understanding of what threat modeling is or of what cyber threat intelligence is would be way beyond what I actually understand, because it's like a collaborative effort among you as a group. Then for group 13, that's Admiral Gondoza and group, you'll be covering MITRE ATT&CK and two forensics tools. And then the last one, which is group 14, with Amanda Dube and group, you'll be covering SIEMs and SOCs application of data analytics, as in how do security incident and event management systems, as well as security operations centers, basically apply or use data analytics. And for the demonstrations, you just have to do two forensics tools. So basically, those are the topics. I am quite certain that many of you may not know what exactly you're supposed to be doing in your topic. But that's the whole point of it being a group research, which you'll cover over a month. And I personally believe that by the time Patno Itama presentations, you'll be quite well versed in these topics, which are very current and very relevant. Any questions? Any questions? Pianos, am I still audible?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. No questions, engineer.
Sorry, there are questions? I don't see any questions. Okay. So I guess then now we have a better understanding of what exactly we're supposed to be doing as groups. All right, so now I'll just get into the rest of the general walkthrough of what this course is supposed to entail. For the different topics in this course. So yesterday we ended by integrity, and when I was explaining about MD5 sums, which is basically a tool you can use to determine the integrity of file could have not changed at any point. And the last part of the CIA triad is availability, which is that the files should be easily accessible or available to anyone who is supposed to access them. So now when it comes to security, it's like a very, very broad field. I will obviously not go through all these different domains, Agalistwap, but as a way of maybe giving you a better understanding, security doesn't just include physical security, obviously, which is my gate, my sensors, and my logs and all that. No. Obviously, there's the aspect here, pen testing, which is like really common and popular with many people as well. But then you'll find it is just a subtopic in a way of the bigger picture, which is cybersecurity. So it basically falls under risk assessment. And another activity that is quite popular is digital forensics, which is down here. And it falls under the domain of security operations. And one of the subdomains is security operations is incident response, which we'll cover in this course. And then also there's investigations, and ultimately there's forensics. So what this means is forensics is a subunit or a sub-process in the investigation activity. And investigation is a sub-topic or a sub-process in the whole aspect of incident response. So yeah, those are like the two main popular fields from what I understand in Zimbabwe. Like when Uganda, they specialize in either pen testing, Kanawati in digital forensics. Of course, others tend to focus a lot into user education, which is split into two groups. It can be training or reskilling, where you're being taught a new skill. It's a certification teaching you to be a better network engineer when it comes to security, or it's teaching you how to better improve security on AWS and so forth. Then we have a different type of training, which is basically awareness. What should you look out for in terms of my attacks that can be perpetrated against you? Then obviously we have threat intelligence, which shall be covered near one of the groups. Then we have governance, my policies, my audits, mitemo, and all that. And then we have those who specialize in just doing Jemana certifications and career development. And we also have security architecture, where you actually build systems for security. Cryptography, cloud security, identity and access management, and all these other interesting sections. Then the approach security, which is present in many, many organizations, is just security operations, where you have teams build with the goal of specifically either doing protection of systems, detection of my attacks, prevention, kind of management, loopholes, and ultimately investigation and incident response. So by no means is this like the whole illustration of what security is, because it's just a part of what this broad field is. I remember when this aspect of teaching as a cloud computing first came around, and I think there's sort of like a similarity in a way to how people approach cloud computing as a concept as they do kind of cybersecurity as a concept. For example, when people think of cloud computing, they immediately assume it's just basically one topic or one particular domain. What all you just focus on is making sure your information is stored on some server in the cloud or on some platform in the cloud and so forth, which is quite similar also to the issue of security, but people just basically assume if it's cybersecurity, the main thing that exists in that whole domain is going to make sure that your information is protected, and that's the beginning and that's the end of it. But then as
Hi guys, is it my connection which is bad, or we have lost the lecturer?
Yeah,
we've lost the lecturer
at this side.
Python, are you doing your job?
Hi Leslie, yes I am.
Have you told him that he's not We're not listening anymore. Okay, is no longer online. Maybe he doesn't know now.
Okay, let me do so.
Kazi inengekariba se-email. Kana utadalika.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Hello?
Hello, sir, we can hear you.
Welcome back.
Yes, sir. Welcome back.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, again,
Yes,
it's
Yes, we can hear you.
that would. I think it's becoming a habit.
Amos phones
It's okay then. All right, so I think I was explaining Kutsi the between cloud computing services. Nrunzika, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Are you able to share your screen?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Is my screen visible, Python?
Yeah, it is visible now.
Okay, thanks. All right, so I was saying, Kuti, the similarity between cloud computing and cybersecurity is in that sort of like a general misconception that security is just one thing, just as the assumption is that cloud computing is one thing. Service, infrastructure as a service, and functions as a service, Mazuan, and all that. So in the same way with security, it's a bit difficult in many corporates for people to understand, Kuti. Security, of course, you can think of it as protection of systems, but it's much broader than just simply as a protection. And so that's basically what this diagram tries to better explain. Kutaka siyani ma domains actually say well. Okay. So in the US, there's a company, the Momentum Cyber. This was back in 2019. They annually prepare this, what they call the Cyberscape, which is like a visualization of the different domains that report the cybersecurity and the players within those domains. So if we were to zoom in a bit, let's see if I can zoom in. You'll find, Kuti, when it comes to, yeah, I think it's quite visible. But alternatively, if we just search for Momentum Cyber, so basically every quarter they produce this particular visualization in which says which companies are in which domain cybersecurity and the other domains manyoan arikumuka in the same field. So I'll just give it a second kuti ipedze loader. So you'd find kuti it is like my different fields essay which were we will not find kuti pane network infrastructure, web security, application security, and so forth. And if we were to zoom in, you would find kuti like let's our major players in that particular area. So this specifically applies to the US. So that's why you see with security, you'll find with Banana, McAfee, F5, Akamai, and Fortinet, and so forth. So that basically applies for all the different fields within the field of the security. Further explaining a bit more, Guti, Akasiani and Akawana say, sorry about that. Yeah, so that's basically my different companies in the different fields, Ziripo, the cybersecurity. I'll just zoom out. So if we're to just extract one section here, which just focuses on pen testing and breach simulation, which is within the subdomain here, risk and compliance. You'll find within Dopani, the few companies or the number of companies that are more that actually specialize in pen testing. Singana Rapid 7, Nana Cobalt, and so forth.
Aisontera mudzidzisi. Iribo.
Online.
Hi. Hello. I think I'm back again.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, okay. So I think I had created some normal videos also more like my video demonstrations, my video lectures for many of the concepts arimo in this particular course. So maybe to cover up for the different times when console break and stuff, you can just basically refer to the videos. I think some of them are already Google Classroom. Yeah, let me just check and verify.
You can share your screen again, sir.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Not yet.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay. Let me see. So if you go to the classwork section, I'll upload this material lecture 3 shortly after this class. But you'll find kuti let me see for lecture 1. For lecture 1, I think you wouldn't do again, wouldn't just the PDF for the PowerPoint presentation, along with some extra reading material that you can refer to. But for lecture 2, there's obviously the reading material, and there's some tools that you can use also. And yeah, there are a number of videos aripo, which are for my practical demonstrations, my explanations. You could see how do you perform security for my networks using my tools like Asana. Then for pen testing also, pane my slides aripo, pen testing and threat intelligence. So these are quite summarized, but then by presentations, you have to maybe go beyond what I would have explained in my slides are. And then for Iran's overview of pen testing and so forth, it's more like a video in Engage explainer, like each of the slides as you go through them. I'm sure there's also some, Panama audios also, my audio recordings, those 2 presentations, or those 2 classes on pen testing and threat intelligence. And then also, Paniyagan's study on virus attacks, which is basically an overview. The other topics atambotaura anga sign up input validation attacks, SQL injection, web application attacks, and so forth. They're just given in brief in this particular slide, Iri, and this video also helps explain the contents in this slide. Then for the next section, which was for computer forensics, there are a few reading articles that you can go through. Also some software that you can use when it comes to digital forensics and where you can download it from. These are basically operating systems that you can download and install and then use for digital forensics. The beauty of Tsurugi is it's basically open source. So most of the tools, if not all of the tools, they're basically free for you to use, and you don't have to pay for any of them. I guess you can say Tsurugi is what Kali is to digital forensics, because Kali, was specifically for ethical hacking, but Tsurugi, this particular operating system, was created for digital forensics and incident response specifically. The second is DFIR, your sharpest weapon in DFIR arsenal, where DFIR stands for digital forensics and incident response. So if ever you want to perform forensic investigations, this is the operating system you would need to install and use. And it comes in a 3 elements mukatimayo, which is Paniyagan's Bento, the portable kit, Yagan's Tsurugi Acquire, and then this one is Tsurugi Linux. Tsurugi Linux is like the operating system or the base operating system, where after you've collected your evidence and you want to analyze it, this is where you take it. If you're to take it in the sense here, what's the flow, it's like my investigations, the first thing you would do is you would acquire evidence, as in a copy a hard drive and all that. So Tsurugi acquire is what helps you to do so. It basically helps you to create a copy of a hard drive or a flash disk in the easiest way possible. And then if you want to make a copy of my different files, aningachirana, kind of my different applications, aningachirana on a live computer, that's where you can use Tsurugi Bento, which is like a portable kit. You just basically plug it into a computer and then you execute it, you collect the evidence. And then Tsurugi Linux is where you do the analysis, as in you take whatever you've copied here or whatever you've downloaded or created by acquire, whatever you've collected with Bento, and then you come and analyze it with Tsurugi Linux. So that's basically where all the analysis happens in terms of investigation. So again, Tsurugi is like the equivalent of Kali. Kali in the ethical hacking kind of pen testing, and Tsurugi specifically in the digital forensics. So these are the links I put download say. And then if you're more comfortable with using, or if you have to do forensic investigations by Windows, you will then have to download either any tool or some tools from these sets Zirapides. Because there's a site in Nersoft which basically keeps or collects my different softwares that basically run by Windows, which you can use to collect evidence specifically on Windows computers. So you have this one here, my browser tools. You also have this one which specifically deals with my different aspects of forensics, be it browsing history, my vault passwords, my wireless keys, event login machine, and all this other information. It's basically all accessible or retrievable using these different softwares. And then for password recovery, there's also this whole set of my tools that I see, be it for Chrome or for different web browsers, for wireless networks, kind of for Opera, kind of for remote desktop connections, kind of VNC and all that. You can basically use any of these tools to retrieve the password in a particular application or a particular platform. So that's basically what all these different links are when it comes to digital forensics. And ultimately, Pane Inon's sysinternal suite Windows. The reason why this thing was created was specifically to help my system administrators to better manage their systems. So in addition to managing systems, the tools Arimo can even be used for digital forensics. Let me see if I have it installed somewhere. Yeah, so all you do is you go by internet, then you try and download sysinternal suite. If you would like more like a user manual on how you can use the different tools at Imoacho, there's a guy, Anand Mark Rasunovich. He's the guy who actually wrote the book, and he actually works for Microsoft. So it basically outlines the different tools at Imomu sysinternal suite and how they work and how you can use them and so forth. I'll try and make sure I upload this book also. But the point I'm getting to is you can also use my tools Arimoimo, which is internal suite, specifically for my aspects of digital forensics. I had also created some videos also for digital forensics. covering my tools, Chrome Pass, an overview, yes, is internals yacho, and a few other tools, and how Tsurugi Bento and Tsurugi Lab basically operate. So you can also go through my videos. I would see, I think they should be still functional. Let me just double check. Okay, so the final demo. Yeah, so they're still functional. So each of them, you just go through them, could see what do they cover, and I think there must be a few demonstrations that would see Anushans was say, be it the operating system, yacho, kind of tools, arimo. And yeah, the slides also digital forensics and an explanation, yeah, all the concepts arimo slides actually or within the course outline. These are also covered by section as slides E. And then some additional reading material when it comes to MITRE ATT&CK. So I guess the group image to this presentation, you can also use this as a supporting resource. Just don't duplicate it because I know how it was structured. Then I think one of the last topics, is on threats and adversarial behaviors. So there's a PDF on that and also a few slides or my videos also, which further explain that, covering the MITRE ATT&CK in general, my elements of a malicious operation, and my different threats, my adversaries. And then, yeah, a few case studies. You would see how can you actually use MITRE ATT&CK. So basically what we are saying is, even though connection and stuff, but most of the material for the course is already available. So what we'll just basically be doing in these classes is further explaining some of the things, even though most of the videos actually they explain most of these concepts quite in depth, with my case studies are very relevant and Anushandika now. So I guess in this, for the lecture sessions, it will mostly be a case of just giving an overview of what you may expect to see in the videos, and then further discussing Jiripo Racho and maybe how it affects the current digital landscape, be it in Zimbabwe or globally. So at least whatever things you learn from this course, they are relevant to wherever you're working or ultimately towards the program that you're studying for, which is data analytics. So yeah, I'll try and make sure that I avail my slides run the lecture 3. So you just basically have everything available for you. All right. Pianos, I hope I'm still online. Am I still online?
Yes, yes, you are available.
All right, thanks. Okay. Then also, I think there was somewhere we had left off yesterday. And scan here, Taita Nmap here. I then ran here against the slow comprehensive scan, which obviously, this is the reason why it's slow and comprehensive, because in it scans akasiyana and it runs my scripts akasiyana within Nmap yacho. So what we find here are the results iscan yacho, where basically it starts by telling you which DAPMA ports are open, passive iroro, and what service typically runs on that particular port, and the version of the software that is running on that particular server. So in this case, Taonoti Pane Apache 2.2.6 Irkurana. We'll get back to that later on. So it gives you all this information about be it the software is Irkurana Ipapo or the different ports are open, and at times it even goes as far as telling you the operating system yacho iri kurana on that particular computer. In this case, it ran a scan and is assumed kuti there were, or the operating system was a Windows 2012 or Windows 2008 server running on it. And to be specific, they suspect kuti it's either 2012 R2 or 2008 R2. So what then you would do as a hacker would basically be, after one information essay, after one all this information, all you just basically do is, let's take this one for example, and it, yeah, but we found out that they are running Apache HTTPD 2.2.6 as a version. We then go to site exploitdb.com. So what exploitdb.com is basically is it's a repository of my different vulnerabilities, nema exploits, anenga gadzirwa nevanhu. So how do I mean by this? Tirikuti, like let's say Microsoft Word, in a particular vulnerability, I could see if you open a funny type of document or a specific type of document, the program, your words, they are crashing. Or if you're using a VOC media player and you try and play some funny video, in a very strange way by a hacker, it somehow ends up causing VOC media player to crash it. So to a hacker, or whatever makes a system crash is always something of interest, because all it means is the program has been forced to stop running. But when something is forced to stop running, that means you can start something else. So what they then do, semi-hackers, is they try and recreate the exact same problem, actually, or the exact same challenge, which we would call a vulnerability. Then when they recreate that vulnerability, they find some way, you could see, crasher. It then starts the hacker's own malicious program or the hacker's own malicious code, which can then take over your computer or do something weird or something funny on your computer. Like kuvra hard drive rako, or like ku crash the hard drive racho, can also ku open a notepad, or even move a calculator, which is something very simple. So basically, when a hacker understands how a program executes, they then write a piece of code which takes advantage of that kalupo karipo. So if I was to outline them as terms, there's something called a vulnerability, exploits, the payload. So every time panunzi a software in a loophole, in a vulnerability. So whatever thing chinoitwa kune a particular software which can be manipulated by a hacker kuti akwanise kuita zvaanoda on that particular computer is known as a vulnerability. And so for every vulnerability iripo which exists, it's always recorded, but in the site, cvedetails.com. So you'll find that for every single vulnerability in every software that exists, it will be recorded on this particular website, the CVE details. And zvainopiwa kuti ikwanise kurecognizwa in this particular database or in this particular repository, yema vulnerabilities from all applications and all systems that exist in the world in a CVE number. So let's just try and pick one. Totikana, let's say VLC. So the product that we searched for is VLC, as in the vendor knows video line. I think for those who use this particular software, unogona panze video line somewhere pamene kana kuinstalla or installing an update. So if we pick this particular product or this software as a VLC, you'll see kuti from when it was created, so far pawanikwa 10 vulnerabilities or 10 loophole in that software. So if we click on it, it should in what exactly those vulnerabilities do. Some of them cause denial of service attacks. Some of them cause Python code execution. Then explained earlier, kuti somehow I can manage to then make the system run code yake yarukuda. So that was back in 2008. And then also in 2017, there were also my cases akadaro. So let's just take kana 1 year code execution, which was from 2017. So what you'll find here is in this particular, the CVE IDE, which is the reference or the identifier in that particular loophole. So if you click on that also, you'll find it gives you even more information. You would see loophole here and say and how exactly did it work. But then this is now just going deeper into the details. You could see after Pawanikwe vulnerability, you could see exist. Then what caused it and how does it work? But the most important thing now to a hacker is not kuti what caused it and all that, but the basic idea or the basic goal in any hacker is how can I manipulate that software, could eat it and not eat it, which is where this site even the exploit DB comes in. So since I found out Apache 2.2 yangine vulnerability ku Zenmap kweli kutaya pana papape. Pataita scan ye 0.12security.com and we did a port scan and we found kuti pani this particular port it open, which is also running this service, and the version the software it service here is Apache 2.2.6. So we took this Apache 2.2.6 software because our goal in this scenario is to hack into this particular server, again 0.websecurity.com. So what we want to do is we want to use this Apache software as a gateway into this server, 0.websecurity.com. So we'll be able to do whatever we want per server now, which is up to the hacker, what I say exactly. So we came to exploit DB because we're looking for the best codes which can exploit or which can break the software version irapai. Sataya kuno kuti kachaka Apache 2.2. And then we found kuti there are all these different options zabudaids. Let's just set it to kind 30 so all of them are populated here. So basically all the different versions actual ima loopholes are not. And I think for ours 2.2.6 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this one would apply query as well as this one also. And furthermore, Tantawanoti Inugana Windows Server 2012 and Windows Server 2008, meaning that it would best work with this particular loophole Irape. So what a hacker would do is after he's gathered that information and did the scan server and found that software he then goes to this site and he clicks on this software, open this particular exploit report. What happens after that is vulnerabilities were more like a summary of what exactly the issue is and what's being exploited. Then here comes the exploit E. This is the actual code that's supposed to then run pauno into that server. So if you run that code, you actually in that particular file on the server 0.2.security.com that should be able to then give us, or basically allow us to gain some information from that server. So you'd find on this side, but let us search here Apache 2.2. The structure is it first states the name of the software yacho, the version, and what exactly you can do, or what type of hacking can actually happen now. So it can be either memory leak, an internet buffer overflow of some kind, some form of shutdown, a denial of service. But the one at Apika actually, it just allows you to then perform information disclosure. Okay, so that will be basically how you'd move on from after write a scan yako nmap on a particular web domain, and after one loopholes aripo and how you'd exploit them. Okay. Hello? Yes, when I'm still online.
Yes, you're still online there.
Okay. All right. So moving on, I guess one of the key things maybe that we would want to talk a bit about is the difference between what's known as what we call security and what we refer to as protection. The difference between security and protection. So is there anyone who can try and differentiate them? Kuti security ne protection jakasiyana, or is it just basically the same thing? Admire mpiwanashi. Admire, hello? I guess Admire is not online as well.
Hello?
Hi, Admire.
Yes, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. I was asking Kuti, can you tell us what's the difference between security and protection?
I think protection is what you do to achieve the whole security. I think the difference is into, let's look at it, maybe I say when you are protecting, you are implementing what you would then call security. You are implementing, it's very difficult to explain this one. Say if I put an antivirus software on a system, then it's part of security. But then what I've done is just a protection. But the security of the whole system is the antivirus software and any other thing that I put in there. Then it becomes all a security. But what I do to achieve that security is the protection. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think Stalin also added a bit more information to that, where they said security is the vital task for a corporation to provide some safety mechanism in order that no outsider will access the knowledge of the organization. And then protection is just basically dealing with access to systems resources. But okay, so given that definition at security and protection, if we're to then compare security and say kind of privacy, how would we differentiate that? Nyaradzo Museza.
May you please come again?
Yeah, I'm asking that. Okay, so now that we have a bit of an understanding of what is security, and any protection, then what's the difference between security and privacy?
I'm not sure, but I'll try to answer. Yeah, I think privacy then means maybe the level of access to a certain system or the kind of people that access a certain system, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I understand a bit. Kumoti, I think I may have made the scope a bit too broad. Yeah, but see, what are we talking about in security and privacy? Okay, so let's say if we were to compare or to do an analysis, say, what is more key or what's more important between, say, kind of national security versus data privacy? Ishmael, karikai kutambura.
Hello, engineer. My network was breaking. Sorry, you can repeat the question again, sir.
Yeah, I was saying since Tantam maybe it was a bit too broad when we explained with the privacy versus security. We maybe if we then make it a bit more specific, Tikati, what is more important between national security and data privacy? Kanachin one. What are your thoughts on that?
Right, when you look at data privacy, normally it plays around personal information about people and how we make sure that that information is only accessible to people who are supposed to access it. It's more like putting protocols or systems in place to make sure that personal information about people is safeguarded. But now when you look at national security, it can be on a broader platform where we are actually looking at probably assets, infrastructure, and system, but not necessarily personal information about people. That's my thinking. I don't know if I strike the gold there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was quite an interesting definition. Eve Montero, what are your thoughts on which one, given the definitions are PYI, which one would you say is more important from your perspective? Is it national security or is it data privacy?
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Did you hear the question?
Yes, it's me, Eve.
Yes, I was asking, did you hear the question or I should repeat it?
I think you should repeat the question.
Yeah, I was saying, from your perspective, what do you think would be more important between national security and data privacy?
I think national security is more important because if the nation is secure, it means there's privacy as well. So I think national security is number one and then privacy number two, but they are equally important. I think they should go hand in hand.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting perspective. Keith Chikwana, there's an interesting point here raised when Naive, where she said, as long as we have national security, then privacy is also is like a byproduct, which we then automatically have privacy. What are your thoughts on that? Is that true or Junosiana? Keith?
Yes, good evening, engineer and team. I think privacy and security are related because as in privacy, it's like limiting the right to access, that is, or control information, like the control of information, like then what's put in place to safeguard, if we are talking about important documents, what are the measures that are put in place to safeguard those things that we want to keep private? I think that's when security comes in.
Interesting. Right. Okay, so let me try and put this in a different or in a more contextual scenario. This is more towards you, Lakson Chikwara. Let's take a scenario you could see there is an option and you're the ultimate decision maker. Gatunguti do HE or something. And there is an option you could see you can either choose to ensure that all your citizens, my WhatsApp messages are and they remain private, or the alternative is you allow a division within the military to basically be allowed to go through my messages, looking for my different threats, be it terrorists and so forth. Which approach do you think would be more ideal from your perspective? Lakson. Lakson Chikwara. I guess he's not online. Would anyone else want to attempt before I pick someone else? Lakson said he'll type his response. Leonard Mazani, would you want to attempt that? While Lakson types his response. Leonard Mazani. Leonard also has mic challenges and he'll also type his response. Tapiwa Naishe Manyanga, did you want to say something?
Okay, good evening. I think here it's a matter of ethics. Maybe the Constitution illustrates that the issue of privacy, that every person has a right to privacy. So I tend to follow what the Constitution says to protect the privacy of the citizens. So I believe it's a matter of ethics here.
Thank you for your perspective, Tapunaisha. That's very interesting. Michelle Mugweni, do you agree or you have a different perspective? Michelle Mugweni.
Sorry, I think I missed the question. Can you please come again?
Yeah, the question was, if you're in the position here, the head of state and then you have an option to choose between saying, my WhatsApp messages, my citizens, they are very private and no one is allowed to view them. That's one school of thought. The alternative is that you select one division, yemu military, you're going to be allowed to go through our messages for all citizens. My messages are up on WhatsApp, and just basically look for what they think may be suspicious or malicious against the nation. Which side would you support and why? Is it understood, Michelle?
Okay, I think if I got you correctly, okay, I think maybe I would support the side of the military. I think if I got you correctly. I also feel like there are certain departments or certain sectors or certain professionals or people who maybe have the mandate of ensuring that the nation is secure or is not facing any attacks. So I think most probably if a certain group of people, maybe like the military or maybe in other countries with the CIA and all that, if they're taking care of the security measures, maybe having access to who's sending what, who's saying what, who can be a terrorist, or I think it will be okay. It might really ensure that the nation is secure or safe.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. So Mary says privacy is the fundamental human right and must be protected. So it comes. Taurai, you want to contribute?
Yes. I just wanted to say something about this issue. This is a very, confusing aspect in terms of security, because every nation would obviously want to have security in the aspect of having security and providing security to its citizens. But now this might even infringe in the basic human rights, where people are now going to be monitored on how they are talking through their phones or WhatsApp messages or whatever form of communication. The question that I would want to bring to the attention would be, are these government agencies going only to use whatever resources that they have to only monitor communications when there is a security threat? Or now it is a case of some other countries like the North Korea situation, where everything that you type on your phone is actually recorded? So I think that's where the balance is to come in.
All right. Thanks for bringing that very unique perspective also. Yeah, that's actually very interesting. And I guess our conversation is going to get to that point also. Because inevitably, what we have to understand is, no matter what systems we end up using, ultimately it's a human being who's behind that particular system, or who is managing that system. And human beings are prone to making decisions for different reasons, be it for financial gain, for some religious reasons, or something like that. Obviously, they'll be tempted to cultivate and misuse the system for some other purpose. Okay, so maybe just to bring a case in Ozikano to help better understand the discussion here. Like the issue here, Edward Snowden here, I know it's quite old, right? It's almost like ancient now, but for those who are not aware, there was this one guy, Edward Snowden, who basically, what did Snowden do? Yeah, he worked for the NSA, and then he was a contractor for them. And well, the NSA had these different softwares, Zairana, which made them able to spy on all this information here, my citizens in America, without their knowledge. And not just my American citizens, but like people from all over the globe. They were able to listen to their chats and read their emails and all that. Like basically have so much access to the information. So what then happened was he got all the information actually Yangeri available to him in his position as a contractor. You would see he would expose all the things the NSA was doing in terms of getting people's information without the permission and then using it for other reasons. And yeah, the Americans wanted to arrest him, and then Amotiza and so forth. So the main debate Yangeripo around that time was, Kuti, what is more important? Is it the privacy of someone's own information, as in the citizen's information, or it is the bigger picture, in quotes, the bigger picture? You would see we're doing all this for national security. We have to see people's messages. We have to see their emails. We have to listen into their phone calls. Are they potential terrorists or not? So that's basically the example scenario, Edward Snowden, which I guess we can use as context. Any thoughts before I get to my comments on my message section?
Yes, I have a contribution.
Yes, Niels, you can go ahead.
I think at the end there is nothing like a privacy, really. yeah, like what you're saying, someone designed the system or someone designed the app, they have access to the database like WhatsApp. We know they have access to the database and everything. So I think at the end, there is nothing like privacy. So maybe, yeah, it's better for the military to snoop. And because someone, if not the military, someone is already snooping. So I think, for the safety of the country, it's okay.
Okay, that is that's a very, very interesting perspective, Kuti. We are already exposed, so there's really no reason for us to try and maintain privacy. Do we all agree to this, or my different thoughts on this line of thinking?
Yeah, for me, okay, Tawanda, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say I do not agree. For this basic reason. Let's say, okay, you would want to pick to introduce this whole scenario where there is a threat, but look at it in a normal way where you guys, there is no any threat. Of course, there are other people who actually want to to gain access to your phones or whatever systems that you'll be using, but these guys are trying to do so by means of hacking into your systems, and the probability of an individual being a target, especially if there is no financial gain, is very minimal. But now, when a government agent is looking at this war, resource that is able to look at each and every one person on what they are doing on their computer, cell phone, or whatever, it now goes deeper than just, targeting for financial gain or targeting for information that is probably a threat or probably whatever sort of information. So you are saying everyone has to be monitored. So am I really now an individual, or now I am just, a puppet of some government, entity that I have to comply to that? Ishmael, you can.
No, my point is, whether you like it or not, even the conversations that we are having right now, you never know, like the servers that the information is passing through, and most probably Google has a copy of all our lectures. So my point is, there is nothing like privacy. Whether you like it or not, the military can approach Google and they can buy that information, they can get it. So my point is just, there is nothing like privacy when it comes to data, especially when you are using the internet.
Okay, engineer, where I wanted to come in, Nyaradzo, I understand where you're coming from. You're saying there is nothing called privacy. But for me, whilst there may be nothing called privacy, but there is also something called confidentiality. When you're looking at confidentiality, we are now saying, who are the people who are supposed to know that information? And are they the right people who are supposed to know that information? I'll give a simple localized example. We have CMAS as a health service. They do have a lot of records, personal records about our health, certain ailments that we have that we don't want other people to see them, but they do have access to it. So in terms of confidentiality, they actually have access to it. There are some other people who can see it, but is it everyone who is going to ask for it who is supposed to see it? So when you look also largely on a large scale in terms of data privacy, we are saying, I'll give an example of organizations that collect personal information about people, probably from the communities in the rural areas and everywhere else. When they get that information, they should have mechanisms to protect that information. Protecting from who? Protecting from people who are not authorized or who are not supposed to get that information. And the government may be the bigger brother, because when there are any breaches to the data, you're supposed to report to them. But also it is the responsibility of the entities involved to put in place service-level agreements to make sure that they don't divulge that information. I'll give an example of Apple. There's this other person, I'll check the name, who had certain information in his iPhone, and then iPhone refused to give them the cracking passwords and the utilities to crack that phone. You see, those people, they respect data privacy, although the government went on to override and engage another Israel company to get to the information that they wanted. But iPhone had done the right thing to protect personal information, and they were upholding data privacy. That's my thinking. Thank you.
I don't know if you
Maybe I can assist you with the name of the person, historians.
Okay, that was a contribution towards one of the other contributions, I believe. So Victor in the comments also says the debate between privacy and national security is complex. There may be trade-offs between security and privacy, which I guess is true. It's true that like for any possible scenario that you come across, there is always some form of trade-off that can be achieved. The reason why we're just basically having this discussion or trying to better have an understanding of this is ultimately when you are working as someone earning this degree in data analytics, you actually have to know beyond just how do you analyze data and so forth. But there's some aspects of the security of data that you may have to factor in or to better understand as you deal with it. I'm sure this legislation or this regulation, the GDPR. Pananga explain a bit about it. GDPR.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Tawanda. Oh, is it Walton?
No, it's Samuel.
Okay, sure. Can you go ahead?
Thank you. Sorry, I used another line to connect. My original one was to give me problems.
Oh, that's fine.
From the basic understanding I have of GDPR is it's just a set of rules that govern the protection of our information, mainly targeting institutions that collect information, so that at least whenever they want to share it with anyone, they have to get people's consent. Like if a bank has your information, if any other institution or any other authority comes through to request that information, they have to get your consent. So it's in a nutshell, I think that's what looks at GDPR and its application.
Yeah, that's very true. And in a nutshell, that's basically what GDPR refers to. Now, the interesting thing now about GDPR is, of course, it's considered as a regulation. Not necessarily it's a law that Africans or Americans or Asians have to adhere to. But what's interesting now about GDPR is my concepts or my different markers are removed within that particular piece of legislation are being taken up by countries from all over the world, and they're basically repurposing that legislation or that particular regulation into their own laws. So you find within if you look at the data protection laws, South Africa, Namibia, like any other country that you can think of, and you compare it to the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, you'll find there's a lot of similarities that tend to cut across those two. So what I'm basically getting at is, while we can look at the GDPR as just some regulation created for Europeans, by virtue of it being adopted by everyone, that means you can basically use it as a marker. You could see if you're to ever operate not only in Zimbabwe, but operate in any country, you have to understand how it works. And not only understand how it works, but also the consequences of going against it or not adhering to it. I can try and maybe give an example. There was a time you could see, I'm not sure, was it 2017 or 2016? I don't recall. Like, it was before GDPR came up. Netflix, Yaka Vayati, we now want to be very serious about Sinyaye Kugazama regions to make sure that no one from another region or another country can access Netflix in a country. For those who are not aware, Netflix is like this particular web application that you can use to view like different movies and different series online. So by virtue of my licenses, I think you've seen it kind of near DSTV. There's some TV shows you can't watch by DSTV, but then they can be seen on other networks and stuff. So by virtue of that demarcation, only DSTV is allowed to show you my games at EPL, and no other broadcaster can do so. That then meant kuti each and every country in the world that is a part of Netflix or that gets services from Netflix, in its own set of channels or its own set of movies. I know it sounds like I'm coming from a bit far here, but bear with me. So what we're saying is kuti in Zimbabwe, my shows ayo egg ainoona. For South Africa, it has its own batch of shows. For US, they have their own batch of shows. For Japan, they have their own batch of shows that they're allowed to watch. But then what then happens is you'll find kuti in Zimbabwe we have less TV shows and movies we can watch as compared to the Americans. And then you also find kuti Namibia, they have less TV shows and movies they can watch as compared to Japan. So what then happened was you would find someone in Zimbabwe, Ashanta VPN, kuta connected to Netflix as if he's coming from America. What that then meant is you would be able to watch my series essay, or movies essay, at Netflix in America, in Zimbabwe, using the power of technology here, VPN, which was fair and fine and good at the time. So then Netflix said, no, we cannot continue to do this. Let's make sure that everyone watches my TV shows. So all this was before GDPR. So they then created this different technology. You could see it was able to uniquely identify every single person and every single account. Browser, and all that. So, yeah. So after they had gone so far as doing that, it was now very, very, almost impossible for people to use a VPN kuta connected to Netflix. Yeku US, kana Netflix in Japan. Somehow, Netflix was always able to tell kuti you are connecting from this particular region, and this is not where you're supposed to be. Sakajadaru, then GDPR came into the picture. So what GDPR said was, you are not allowed to store someone's information without them knowing kuti you're storing their information. You have to actually tell them kuti, I'm going to store your information and I'll use it for this, 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 and this. And so Netflix had not told its users, kuti, we will be using your information to uniquely identify you so we can block you from accessing my shows. So what that then meant was they were no longer able to use this technology in the browser fingerprinting, where you can basically identify someone using their browser. Don't care like change IP address or anything. You're still able to tell that person with Diani. Even again, I'm incognito, you can still tell with Uichi Diani exactly. So by virtue of using that technology to uniquely identify a person, then they're no longer able to do analytics and say, this person is Robert Shonhiwa, who is in Zimbabwe, even though he's pretending to be Robert Shonhiwa, who is in the US. I'm not still it.
Yes, we are following this. Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is because of GDPR, Netflix was no longer able to use this very key piece of technology, which was able to block people from breaking or abusing their platform for different reasons. Because now they were no longer able to uniquely identify a person because of GDPR. So now where this all ties in is kuti, if we go back I said most of the laws is you'll find kuti they're basically adopting, if not Sezhairi, they're basically adopting most of the concepts that more regulations in GDPR. So what that means is if your company uses people's data for any reason whatsoever, then it's very key for you to understand what the GDPR in it. Because at some points, be it in Zimbabwe, Pachazopindo, our own laws, the data protection, you'll be in the exact same situation in Netflix. Maybe not kuti munge muri stage you don't want to, or you want to be able to identify my users as unique users. But for one of your unique use cases, you take the data you have for granted. You then realize, but after that law comes into effect, Panama fines, Panama terms, Mawendo Jerry for misusing data and so forth. You then realize, but there's quite a nuanced element of security in Ngeripo, which is not something you would typically find in courses like this. But then for you to fully understand, okay, GDPR I know pinda up, and the importance of data protection, the importance of information around and when it comes to national security, this is very important. You won't be able to understand how that all applies to GDPR until you first have that discussion with what comes first between national security and individual privacy. Tyson.
Yes, sir.
Why are we having this discussion?
Exactly.
Okay. And so basically, that's what I was just trying to, it's something that we tend to overlook a lot because when it comes to security, we mainly focus on is it either we're being hacked or we are somehow responding to an incident and we're using data analytics for either one of the two processes. But then ultimately, what we also have to consider is before discussions when it comes to security, there is also this aspect of the security before it, which is legislation and so forth, that we have to consider. And right now, like there are a few companies that I consult for. Before all this, I was not that much aware what's the impact. I think most of you have come across the National Cyber Crime and Data Protection Bill, Richiri in the process of zero and stuff. But if you go through it, because the company actually, they basically wanted us to sort of be prepared and to create my structures, my policies, before the law becomes a law. So what we basically did is target like to my workshops so you could basically understand what the section data protection actually entails and what needs to be done and what we'll need to avoid going forward, Kuditisa, Sungwe and all that. So maybe this is just an aside, but then I sincerely hope that within your own organizations, please have this discussion before the law actually becomes a law. Because as far as I understood, there is a lot of data and a lot of information that we take for granted and process after it may become quite complicated for us to operate. In some cases, you'd find some companies actually ending up closing because their whole business process is circled around manipulating people's data. So yeah, I mean, it will make sense, but I hope that at least you've gotten something from this huge speech and data.
Yeah, we are following.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
it's making sense. Engineer.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, Pane, that you said DPRS, is it?
Let me type it. You know, the GDPR.
Yes, that one. How does it enforce, or how does it guide a company? For example, you remember there was a time when one of the telecoms giants, Econet, when it started off with what was that service, Sasai. We were getting messages that so and so has joined Sasai, but I don't even have installed Sasai on my phone, and I was getting those messages. Weren't they, in conflict of that? Is it an act? Is it I haven't heard about it though. And also, from the explanation, I picked that this is a situation where someone, let's say, company A wants information wants to access information from company B about its subscribers or its client base. Then the company from which we're going to get this information have the mandate to then find or to get consent from the clients or customers. But in this case now, it is a sort of a unitary position where the company itself is using the data it has to manipulate it and, for financial gain.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I got lost about on the first question, but I'll just try and respond to the second one. The scenario which you highlighted just now, you would see like a company may misuse. Oh yeah. So the first question was you would Econet by messages, you would Sasai and so forth. Or GDPR or not. So GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it specifically applies to the EU and EU citizens. So if you are any company that processes information EU or a citizen of the EU, then you're liable to adhere to it. But then now, when I was saying the impact in Zimbabwe, what most countries are doing is they're basically taking GDPR as a regulation, then they are, I want to say adapting it, though in many cases is just adopting it, but I'll just say we're adapting it for Zimbabwe or adapting it for different countries to make sure whatever chakataura GDPR, we are applying it in our own country. But now vanozotongwa nema laws in Zimbabwe, kind of laws in South Africa and so forth. So in that case, Econet was not liable to be punished by the EU, I guess, because I think the punishment it's either 4% of your gross revenue as a company, or it's about 4 million euros, depending on whichever of the two is the higher one. That's the one you're supposed to pay. So that's with respect to GDPR. But then for your second question, you mentioned like when companies use or take their clients' information over like one of their partners at a cost and so forth. That particular use case is actually covered. Interestingly, it's covered more near the data protection bill in Zimbabwe. Even though I said law, right, but that aspect is actually covered. And it has now been criminalized in that particular bill, but you cannot share your client's information with another service provider. first of all, without them knowing. And then also, if a client says, I am now closing my account, Nini, I would like you to delete my information, you're supposed to then actually delete information a client here. But then obviously that's like a can of worms when you start considering ads, the audit and stuff. If it's a financial institution, are they actually allowed to delete my records in my former clients' hour and so forth? So there's a lot of discussion that will need to be done on that particular topic. But I hope I've answered the two questions that you asked.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so just to recap, it's not Kuti, we are diverting from the structure of the course. I hope to remember this. All the material, Kuti, course outline, and the different topics are covered. You'll find, Kuti, there are these comprehensive videos and Google Classroom, which are available to you for you to go through and to watch and to better understand and use as a basis for research. As I mentioned in the very first class by Guti, for this particular semester, the approach has changed. We should take more of a project-based and a self-study approach as compared to just basically going through slides for students to listen to you as you preach to them and then basically say amen to you by returning whatever words you would have said in your slides or in your presentations. So the information in NAGPI, which is in the videos and the slides, you can use it as guidance material. But ultimately, you have to do a lot more further research individually. So what I'm using these my different slots for is more to address to my more nuanced aspects of security, which you won't typically find within your course. Because I understand what you won't necessarily get the chance to have my discussions like I so as frequently or to hear my different perspectives from other industries or other people when it comes to specifically data analytics and security. I hope that makes sense.
Engineer, good evening.
Yes, Mashi.
Just sorry if I might be seeming to take you, but just checking. When we talk about, there is a question that was just asked just now about companies using our personal information. Are certain things not covered in the terms and conditions that we are not able to deny as long as you want to use certain services or applications? So to see, you have to accept terms and conditions for you to be able to access this. And later on, because we don't really read those things, they might have put certain disclaimers in there to say, by agreeing to this, you also agree that we can use your information with our other parties and so forth. Are they not covered there? And if they are, what can we do around that? I know it's something that has been happening that we really don't have a say about most of the times, that we don't read through. But is it something that we're going to cover to see how that affects privacy and also even confidentiality?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tinashi. As I said again, because I hadn't actually, when I first went through the data protection bill, REM Zimbabwe initially, it was more from an academic perspective, where you're just basically looking at it and thinking, this is basic, this is common, this is what everyone else is doing, it's okay, it's fine. But then after you have my interactions with people who are actually trying to apply or actually trying to analyze people's data and getting their perspective, you could see how do we treat this piece of legislation. What's very interesting is you'll find the exact same scenario that you've just highlighted, which was like a loophole, companies for them to get you to agree to things without realizing you're actually agreeing to something is actually covered in this cybersecurity and data protection bill, and also within GDPR. That's why you'll find these days frequently, whenever Google, whenever Twitter, whenever Facebook tries to make an update to its terms and conditions, they don't put them in fine print anymore. Either a link to a particular page, and on that page, they are told they're not supposed to use like fancy lawyer speak. It should be very clear and straightforward. Anyone can understand what do you want to do with this particular data. And paninye kuta opt-in and opt-out, because that's another different section within that particular regulation and within the Zimbabwean data protection bill. You could see the default is that people should, for whatever service you sign up for, there are two options. It can be either you opt into it or you opt out of it. When you say opt in, that means what you sign up, you have an option to choose. You could see, do I want to receive my newsletters, Aya, or do I? I'm sorry. So, is there a question? So mnakandafa. Hello? Okay, sorry. I thought actually I think our time is almost up, so I'll just wrap up and then I'll respond to Saul's question after Apenza. So as I was saying, whenever it comes to my services that you can sign up for online, I think you find two options that you can work with. It's either you opt in or you opt out. Opt out, all right, let me start with opt in. Opt in, the equity, paunenda pani sign up page, panning a to my checkbox, do you want this and do you want this? And is it? So if you tick what you want it, then you're opting in. And then whatever process knows it afterwards, that's fair and fine. Then you can sign up. But then can I opt out? That means you have to explicitly say, Kuti, I don't want to be a part of this. So in those scenarios, you'll find Kuti, can I sign up page? Let's say in my newsletters, already kunzi, I want to receive newsletters. And then you have an option here, you can untick I want to receive my newsletters. So that's basically what's known as opt-out. So within the legislation, GDPR, the data protection bill, it is imperative, or it is stated with every organization has to ensure my companies or my clients, they are given the option to opt in. And so just by default, whatever service that you want to give to your users, or in a hidden way without them knowing, you can't do that anymore. Because whatever hidden service you want to provide to them, you actually have to state clearly, please sign up for this service so you can be offered it. And then if someone doesn't want it, they can simply choose not to and still be able to sign up for your service. So yeah, I think with respect to these my hidden services, sign up for, they actually now have to clearly and explicitly tell you, we are signing you up for marketing, not only from us, but from all our partner organizations and all our subsidiaries. They will now be able to send you all this information. And so if anything changes, they then have to send you an email clearly stating, please opt into this particular service. Agree and continue. And it won't be like a really long paragraph or anything. I told you, my short points are straight to the point. So yeah, that's basic. The thing is, it helps panenya data protection, but then when it comes to, as in data protection for individuals, but when it comes to the operations, my companies, inenge chivhara mukoto yakati wandei that they can make money from, be it through user analytics or kana some other form of management here that Tarema uses now. So I hope I've answered your question, Chinashe.
Yes, you have, and thank you. Thank you.
That's fine. So our time has now reached 7:30. I don't know if there are any other questions that are outstanding before we. Okay. Saul's question was, what are the hindrances in applying the GDPR in its entirety or incorporating it into our act under formulation, given that as the global village is upon us, we cannot escape interaction with countries or entities under compliance of GDPR? Yeah, that's a very loaded question. What's the risk if we implement GDPR into our acts? Because basically, and truly, we are turning into a global village. If you try and consider the number of Zimbabweans who are working for international organizations or non-Zimbabwean organizations, we really are like a part of a global village. But I guess it will be something we may have to debate as a class or have a longer discussion. You would see what can we do to either apply it to then the approach here, AML and SCFT. Interesting. Okay, so I think what we can do is we can pick up from here when we start our discussions tomorrow. On how best or
So this is a 3
Engineer.
by 2 agenda, a 3 by 2,
Engineer.
a 3 by 2. Can we see this?
This
is 1, 2, 3. This is the
isusu
closing part
tokungovharwa tiri kumateresi kunoku, especially pamatools atinokwanisa kushandisa on this module. Pamwe zvambotaurwa tichingonetseka kuconnecta kupinda muclass. The tools that we can use for this particular class, or people just have to
Tensor is a
explore.
rank of 3 or dimension of.
Sorry, Tara, is it your connection in a background sound? It sounds quite loud, so we can't really hear what you're saying. Sorry about that. Can you repeat it? Tara, hello?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, can you repeat what you said? Pumping a bit of background sound when you're speaking, but I think it's fine now.
Oh, okay. I was just asking kuti in this module tikungovharwa tiri kumateresi, and people, I'm quite sure I'm not the only one who is not even understanding what we are doing or what is the goal of this whole thing. Of course, we have read the course outline. In a nutshell, we know, kuti we are supposed to go to Bulawayo, but the road to take us to Bulawayo is actually very trickier and getting messier and messier by the day, especially when it comes to the softwares and tools and all those things. Is there, maybe is there, a formula of how these things are actually done? Is there a list of softwares and tools that we have to have on our laptops for us to explore all these ideas? It's actually Kwandiri. I am speaking for myself. I don't know about others. Kwandiri, I'm not even aware of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and thanks a lot for raising that, actually, because I think one day we have this perspective, and they weren't able to voice their opinions on this one. Yeah, so maybe to better help you understand, this whole thing here, cybersecurity, is actually a subdomain in field here, IT and computer science and stuff. So it's only after you've done a bit more of the IT, then you can maybe have a much better understanding of what actually happens when it is cybersecurity. But be that as it may, you'll find that there are some people who have no experience whatsoever in the field of cybersecurity who just basically pick up mere curiosity, then they end up picking up my different softwares that they learn and they end up mastering, and ultimately they become kind of cybersecurity experts. Now, regarding the question, equity, what is the point of the course within the bigger picture, Yaju? This course was titled Ethical Hacking and Digital Forensics. So ethical hacking and digital forensics are two different things, which are all within the domain of cybersecurity. I guess as an option, they would have given you this course, Bangweti Inonzi cybersecurity, but that would have made it very, very broad. And there's no way, I guess what you would have benefited from the course would be a bit different from what you're benefiting from it now. Ultimately, the reason why they were split RE2 and combined into one, because as I mentioned, ethical hacking and forensics are just two small components of the bigger picture, the cybersecurity. But what makes it very important for this particular course is ultimately you'll be dealing with data. And as we continue to have these discussions, GDPR and so forth, you understand that as we go forward, be it with technology, with time, or with our lives, data is becoming very, very critical. It's turning into, I guess people would call it an asset of some kind. And obviously for you to deal with my assets, it's beyond you just simply using an asset. You have to know how to protect it and how to maintain it and how to make sure that if anything happens to it, you know chicha itka kwa hili. So you can go back to the state here initially. So in that same vein, you may think of, because this is a program, data analytics, the ultimate goal is you have to be able to manipulate data like an expert. But then in the event something goes wrong, because somehow you're compromised or your data is compromised by malicious actors, my hackers, my competitors in the same field as you are, for one reason or the other. You have to be able to then have extra skill, you know how did they do what they did, which is where the ethical hacking part comes in. You're basically learning how do hackers use my tools to compromise not only systems, but the data as well, hosted on those systems. So that's the whole purpose of this whole topic of ethical hacking. So much that if, like, let's say you work for a company like an AWS, an Netflix, and so forth, can I park into a discussion, you could take an incident where your data has been compromised or you've been hacked and you're not able to operate. You always say one of the lead data analysts, you would have a starting point. You can just when they tell you what happened was a packet capture of some kind, and then they escalate in privileges, and then they did this, so all those terms and in that discussion, you actually know what teacher we take, rather than you being like one step behind and trying to understand, but why? What is this whole discussion about actually? And yet it's your data because you're the data owner. Since you're the lead analyst, so you actually have to know what happened, which is where the ethical hacking part comes in, and then ultimately, how do I respond to such a case? What do I do to make sure this does not happen in future? How do I know who tampered with our data? Who misused this particular aspect of our data? That's where the forensics part comes in. So it's basically helping you understand how can you be compromised and how can you recover after you've been compromised. So it's beyond just owning data. It's also managing it and making sure it's secure. I hope that makes sense. Sorry?
Yes, it is making sense. You see, the challenges that we are having is, okay, for example, Patata, that example, that tatichi web app zero a web app.
Zero security.
Iyo we use the tool yatashandisa paipa. So tuma tools tuya tati inonzi Zmap.
Yeah, Zmap.
Iyo those tools idzodzo ndatokubvunza kuti are we supposed to have those tools and dzakawanda sei, and pane pandambunzwa muchitaura kuti there is munhu wega amufanira kuduplicata zvaitwa neanother group or another pair or whatever pachichaita malab report. Does this mean kuti kana tiri 50 there are 50 different tools that people can use? Ipapo ndo pandisingonzwisisa hangu kuti I'm coming from a perspective yekuti I'm not even a computer person. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So regarding the issue equity, which tools do you have to install? Yeah, when it comes to hacking, the tools are numerous. There should be like thousands and thousands by internet that if you just do a search, you'll find but then also, if you look at the course outline, it outlines my different concepts like DNS spoofing, the ARP spoofing, kind of SQL injection, and so forth. All those are different types of attacks that can be done on a computer, or there are different ways a hacker can compromise the system. So now, you're in a technique, but then the number of softwares that you can use to achieve that technique akawanda zvekuti. So that's why you'll find kuti even though nati, because I think we have about 140 in this class, which would mean in total that's maybe 70 tools a forensics and 70 tools a ethical hacking. What then the interesting thing now is let me just try and share my screen real quick. I hope this will help make sense. I'm sorry I'm going to overtime a bit, but I think the questions being asked by Tauraya are very relevant to the discussions the course in way. Just 1 second. I'll just share my screen now. Please let me know kind of screen we are visible.
It is visible.
Okay, thanks. So what I'm doing right now is I'm logging into the Kali Linux operating system. And is it? As I mentioned, Peptanga, I think during the discussions, I said Kali is an operating system which is specifically used for Nyaze hacking, just like in an operating system, the Tsurugi is used specifically for digital forensics. So now, and this time like web application security and so forth, from topics at Mum course outline. So if we open Kali, you'll find with Panama categories which is like information gathering, vulnerability analysis, web application analysis, database assessment, password attacks, and so forth and so forth. So all these are different tools that you can use for Jinja hacking. So let's assume the technique that 5 pairs have decided to work with password attacks. So this is just one technique. But the thing is, within the field of password attacks, there are so many tools that you can use to password attacks. So you can see with my tools Siana, as in you have Anna John, Medusa, and all these different tools. They have different names. They were created by different people, but the purpose that they serve is the exact same one. They break my passwords, or what we call in security, the password cracking. If you have a password, it is set on any platform. These tools, should be able to break that password and tell you ichi password yacho inoshandisa nemunhu iye. So paipa tiri kuti we expect you to have my individual tools akasiyana. That means how many groups is this? If we say 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, or 20 and it. Let's say 20 groups decide to focus on the topic or decide to choose a tool, field ethical hacking, a password attacks. One can choose this one tool, you may choose a hashcat, you may choose a hash ID, you may choose a SameDump2, you may choose a Hydra. And ultimately you find with Akato1, and this is just one domain, field ethical hacking. Find also Gema database assessments, find Gema web applications assessment, and you can choose any one of these tools also. So you'll find the tools you can use for ethical hacking are not to put us 70 and so if you go through all the different sections, you'll find there are like so many tools that you can actually try and use. The same tool, iri kana 2 or 3 groups, and yet they have so many options. Then I'm not why are we saying it should be possible for all of you to have like a different tool, and this is just within Kali. Because if we go to different sites, the kitploids.com, if you open this particular website, date in there, it's like 5 hours ago. Someone just uploaded a new tool, Shanswa for hacking, the Radar 2. And this is just like 5 hours ago. So if you try and go back in history, you can Windows Cheta and then if we scroll down, page 1, page 2, websites. But if you go back to older posts, this website has been there since like way before 2015. And every day people constantly upload my new tools that they would have written on their own and posted by GitHub. Because if you go by GitHub, you also find my different tools also are available, which you can just simply download and learn how to use. So ultimately, you'll find my tools are ethical hacking. There are so many of them. We've just brushed like just the top of the list of my tools that exist actually, but there are like so many of them beyond this. And okay, just to also add on, so the whole point here, of course, in a way, is as I said, is for you to understand how does the ethical hacking part work, and how does the digital forensics part work. But then Jadaro, the reason why I have insisted each and every person is a part of a pair, and each pair works on 2 tools, where one tool is for ethical hacking and one tool is for digital forensics. What that means is in each pair, either you will learn how to use 2 more tools or you will master one tool. At the end of the day, you'll obviously end up finding one tool, but it's a matter of be it as a group or murma pairs. I now understand how to use this one particular tool. And the benefit is it's not just the tool that you learn to use, it's the concepts that underlie that tool. If you learn John the Ripper, you don't just know how to use John the Ripper. Now you understand password attacks, what do we actually mean, and how do we protect ourselves from such things. So I know it would just seem like even though Makawanda ISO, but work in pairs, not my group say 3 and 4. The risk one day is passengers. You would find 5 and I give you 2 tools to work with. Apashaye munhu wane kuti anopedza course asingatobvozire kana anything nezvenyaya dzeethical hacking. But then at least kana muri 2, at some point, even though kana ari munhu wane acho ari kuita research and everything, unotobvunza nawo kuti chii chiri kuitika. And then you will learn from that one other person. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question well enough, Taurai.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much, because these are for some of us, we are very, coming from some very weird backgrounds, and it is very funny in understanding these things. But I think we'll get there. Thank you very much, engineer.
No, it's fine. And as I was saying, the beauty of Matuza ethical hacking is the people who create them, they go to like extreme lengths to help you understand what Inoshana say. And you'll find what most likely for every tool Yamawana Mkali, and for any tool that you find on Kitploid, someone has created a video for it. So it's all is you just go through the video, utitaka walk through, click up, you want to click off it up. Click up, put it on the same thing on your computer. So that's basically it's a very intuitive process, when it comes to developing and guidance when it comes to the security. But thank you so much for asking that question. I understand, given the Mixima backgrounds in these particular classes that you cut, you won't find, it's never a case with the whole class in an IT background. So at least since you've asked the question, I'm glad, Kuti, you may have spoken for others, but I was really very comfortable, Kuti, highlighted that point. So thanks for raising that. If there are any other questions, I think I can just take them now before we sign off for today. Any other questions? All right. I guess in the absence of any other questions, that is it for today. Then I guess we'll be meeting up again tomorrow. Just to confirm, pianists, our classes is tomorrow and Muswe Monday.
Yes, it's tomorrow and Monday.
Okay, so my request, Kwamuri, is I had put a tentative date, submission, the pairs assignment as the 30th of September. But I need you to just confirm with me, is that date okay with everyone before we set it in stone? Kanauti, you would want the evening to go through it, then Mondo's tomorrow before class.
I think we'll tell you tomorrow.
So it's fine. So you just let me know tomorrow. For now, we can just leave it since the 30th of September, but then if you decide on a different date, I think the maximum I can allow is, I think, 1 week before you start your examinations. Beyond that, I won't be able to do so.
Okay, that's all right.
That's fine. And yeah, apologies for the breaking connection for me and the other guys on which face these are issues today. But again, let's meet tomorrow at 5:30, and so have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, engineer.
Right, I'll be signing off now. Thanks, everyone.